2 minutes, folks. 2 minutes. Are we being recorded right now? We are? Okay. So I'll be careful what I
Other than my personal listening.
what I say.
Other than my personal listening device.
Other than yeah.
Could you speak into my caller?
Dave taught me this trick. Good afternoon, everybody.
On purpose, accident.
Good afternoon.
Accidentally on purpose.
Thank you all for coming. We have a couple of people online today. Directors that are online, I have a difficult time seeing you, and it's not just because of age. So please actually verbalize when you have your hand up so I can catch it. Thank you. You have to excuse my voice. I'm going through the change, so please be patient. Confirmation of quorum.
We do.
We do. Call to order. And we are acknowledging that we are located on the traditional territory of the Lakota people. Welcome. Good afternoon, Director Kern. How are you? Good. Thanks for coming today. I understand, yeah. Adoption of public agenda. We got Wally and we got Colburn. Okay, petition and delegations. Peter Vinal, co-founder of Sustain Technologies, will make a presentation regarding solid waste technologies. Peter, you have 10 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Wonderful. You can all hear me? Yeah, so it's Peter Vinyl is the pronunciation, actually, and it's kind of ironic because I'm in the plastic business, or waste and plastic business, so I get that question a lot. Hands up those who have heard of Sustain. Oh, good. Okay, so I just like to kind of gauge, you know, what kind of knowledge base we have here. Okay, Edith showed me which switch to push. It's this one right here. There we go. So listen, first of all, pleasure to be here. I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to hit the high points. Very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and kind of and hopefully get some feedback as well. I mean, very interested in sort of your perspective here to waste and where it's headed. I'm going to tell you our story, where we've been in the last couple of years. Some of you with your hands up have heard of us, and you know we've been engaged and we've been looking at project locations on the island. So what I want to do today is just give you a walk through the history of Sustain a little bit, and then where we are today and what that journey has entailed. We started back in 2014, so I guess it's the best 10 years of my life, right? I had a whole career in pulp and paper, from engineer to chief executive, and decided to get into the waste business. Didn't actually happen that way, but I saw an opportunity to really develop, to bring technologies to the waste space that I would say has been languishing for a while. Don't take offense if you're in the waste business, but it's a very traditional space. We make a lot of garbage in our society, we dig holes, we put it in the hole, we cover it up, and then, you know, most of us forget about it. That's not good enough, and the foundation for Sustain was really built on how do we find a better way to do this? What kind of solutions are there out there? Burning garbage is a really bad idea, particularly plastic, something I believe very strongly in. And so it comes down to how do you separate it, and how do you separate garbage economically? Digging a hole is easy, it's the default solution, but there's a lot of material there. The problem is it's all mixed, it's everything. And so the challenge with waste is how do you get that separation to really work? So what we've done at Sustain is we've leveraged pulp and paper technology. I used to work for Fletcher Challenge, and part of my career a long time ago, I came to Elk Falls Mill many times. And so I love to cook. I like combustion. I like cooking. So the quick and dirty here is the main challenge in separating garbage is paper and cardboard, actually. Because why? Because they're strong, right? They retain their form. And so physical separation using people, you know, with their hands is not cost effective, and it's frankly demeaning work. It's not the future. But paper and cardboard take a very difficult form to separate. Leveraging pulp and paper technology, if you cook, you can break the paper and cardboard back into pulp fibers, right? The reason paper is strong is hydrogen bonding at a molecular level. We break those hydrogen bonds by using a process called thermal hydrolysis. It's not burning, it's just steam. And in fact, it's not even pulping with chemicals. We just use steam, right? So we get to a certain temperature and pressure, and wham, those molecules, the carbon bonds break, and we're back to pulp fibers. So basically, that's what we're doing, is we shred the garbage, we cook it. That enables us to then screen it into a biogenic stream and a plastic stream. Not quite as simple as that, but essentially that's what we do. I'm not going to read the bullet points on these pack. I think you've all been eaters. I think you distributed this pack to everybody. So if you haven't read it, you know, hopefully you can go through it and feel free to come back with questions. So long story short, about 6 years of development, and then build our first plant. And what we expected to take a year to get up and running didn't happen, right? It was hard. Things didn't work. You know, the concept we deployed was, we've got this new concept for cooking as I described, and then we're going to use kind of off-the-shelf technologies as much as possible. The problem was they didn't fit together, right? And so material handling was sort of a bigger challenge than we ever expected. So it's taken us a lot longer. So where are we right now? At our plant in Nova Scotia, we're running about 50% capacity, okay? So we'd like to be at 100, but we're not. We're at about 50. So we can run at about 100 tons a day on garbage in, and we can separate that into biogenic and plastic. In order to make our system economic, we had to address cost, right? So, okay, none of us like landfilling, but it's not that expensive. Digging a hole is not that expensive and covering our garbage. And so what we have got to do is compete with that, because we can't go to a community like you guys and say, well, we just want to charge you, you know, $200, $300 tipping fee, and you know, you can save the planet from garbage. Not going to happen. We've got to be competitive with landfilling. And so from the get-go, we said, how do we do that? It's about energy and it's about people. We can't employ a pile of people. Labor is expensive. And those people should be highly skilled, so automation was the solution, right? Centralized control, a lot of automation, cameras through our plant. Hopefully one day you get a chance to do a virtual tour of our plant in Nova Scotia. We've got 40 high-resolution cameras. Happy to set up a meeting and walk you through it when the plant's running. It's pretty cool. The second solution, the second problem was energy. It takes a bit of energy to make steam, to cook the garbage. It takes a bit of energy to dry the biomass to make a high-valuable fuel or agricultural product, which I'll come to. But guess what? 20% of garbage is plastic, and plastic is pure energy, right? Made from oil. How do we get that energy out of the oil? We use a process with multiple stages, but essentially it's got a pyrolysis component where we don't burn the plastic, we take it up to a high temperature, vaporize it, closed container, no oxygen. That vapor is like natural gas, right? There's no pollutants, there's no emissions from that. Essentially, we're doing it in a closed vessel, and we're able to run the whole facility with about a quarter of the energy in the plastic, okay? So that was the other sort of breakthrough, I would say, in the whole concept with Sustain, was the ability to make the process economic by solving the labor problem. You can't afford to have a lot of people picking garbage, and the energy problem, get out the energy in the plastic. The plastic piece, plastic to fuels and naphtha, has become circular. So the other thing I want to talk to you about, which has changed in the last year and a half, I guess, is the fact that the world is not only demanding circular solutions, meaning our garbage has got to have another life. How do we circularize it in our society? But we can actually deliver on that. And I'm going to give two examples. The first one, if you look at this page here, at the top, top right, you'll see what looks like wood pellets. That's our biomass. So roughly 50% of garbage, goes into a pellet, looks like that. Initially, that was a product for combustion, meaning, sell it to a utility or use it for district heating systems. It'll be burned just like we burn coal, oil, natural gas. It's carbon neutral, so that's great. Problem is, more and more folks are saying, we don't need to burn anything, really. We've got solar, we've got wind, why do you need to burn stuff, right? And the reality is, of course, it's advantageous to burn a carbon neutral fuel, biomass, compared to a fossil fuel that's come out of the Earth's crust. But there's this perspective. At the same time, we were approached by some agronomists and agricultural folks in the government who said, how about looking at using your biomass as a fertilizer? Long story short, we're very close to getting our first CFIA approval for use of our biomass as a fertilizer, as an organic fertilizer. And we've been able to modify our process to enhance the nutrient value, essentially eliminate any heavy metals. And we're in field trials in Atlantic Canada this spring. In fact, the plant's running right this moment, making biomass for potato farmers to put on their fields late spring, mid-spring, and very much looking forward to getting the results from those trials. The trials last year were a spectacular success. The second example is the liquid fuel from plastic. We don't call it fuel anymore because we're making a product that's 50% diesel, 50% naphtha. Naphtha is like somewhere between gasoline and kerosene, and it is the building block of plastic. So we've got suddenly chemical companies saying, gee, you make naphtha? Send us some, we'll test it. And we're about to sign on with a very large European group that wants to take all of our naphtha to turn it back into plastic, circularizing plastic, okay? So again, great that we can make diesel that can displace, fossil fuel out of the ground, but better if we can circularize it, put it back into the communities, run it in, trucks, whatever, in the community. So that's a big theme for us, and clearly it's the future. I wanted to just touch on kind of, what are we doing here in Strathcona, right? Well, we've had discussions, over the last couple of years with the Comox Valley folks. You are partnering with them, felt it would be important to come and talk to you, take your questions on how Sustain would fit into an environment like this. It's seldom we talk to a community that, has enough waste, frankly, that can you can just situate a plant. Often we're talking to multiple groups and trying to figure out how do we work together, and that's important. So what would be the benefits to put a project on Vancouver Island, in the northern or central part of the island, which is where we've been looking? It's recognition that you're a leader, right? We can divert 90% of waste away from a landfill with our technology. Our goal is 100. We can see a way to get to 100. Right now, we can do 90. So it's recognition that we're doing the right thing for future generations. It's cost, right? So we can run our facility at a lower cost than you can landfill. So we're generally aware what tipping fees are in the communities that we're engaged with. And so there's money to be had here and savings. And that's important at the end of the day. we've got to be competitive. Lower carbon footprint, dramatically lower carbon footprint. So our process is carbon negative because we eliminate the landfill, we eliminate the, the production of methane in the landfill. Even if you collect methane and you burn it or sell it as RNG, it's never that efficient. You might get 50, some say 80, but no, the real answer is closer to 50. And so we can eliminate that completely. So that's a huge positive. We can make low carbon fuel available for local use. So that's a positive. We can just sort of reduce your risk of long-term disposal, right? Like landfills aren't permitted. It's very difficult to get a permit, to expand a landfill. And I would say a generation from now, it'll be impossible. So we have to find solutions. So we're going to be, if we want to be a part of the future, we have to be a part of finding a solution and not go with the flow. Spin-offs from our technology, we already have some in Nova Scotia. Some folks are setting up to take some of our byproducts. And of course, there's jobs associated with a plant. So those are the benefits of coming to a community here or nearby. Just a quick outline, which is in the pack, and I think I'm going to run out of time here. But basically, a plant we would build here would take around 70,000 tons of waste, which would be, so this community, Comox, outlying areas, would be approximately the right size. So it's a good fit from that perspective. And the products would be about 35,000 tons a year of biomass, which would either go for agriculture or combustion for thermal energy, and around 12,000 liters of diesel and or naphtha that could be used locally or could be used to produce plastic. We do have the option with our process to take more organics. We know you guys have a fantastic organics program and treatment plant here in Campbell River, and so that'd be off the table for sure. But we have a lot of flexibility in our platform to be able to take not only organics but other waste streams. And so we've been working with the different producer responsibility organizations that are emerging in Canada for managing extended producer responsibility for waste products, packaging products primarily, to try and figure out how do we best intercept that offtake for our technology. The plant would be around $40 million cost. Our business model at Sustain is we build it, we take the risk. So there's no risk for a community. You don't have to put up any money. You just have to commit to give us your garbage, right? And so we'll be looking for a reasonably long term such that we can justify, raising the capital to build the plant. We wouldn't be encumbering. Of course, if the community wants to invest and be a partner in a financial sense, that's fine. We're open for that, but it's certainly not necessary. In terms of location, we need about 10 acres of land for our plant. Very much welcome First Nations participation. We see that as being beneficial and a win-win. It's the right thing to do. We're displacing landfill. Utilization of land is very important to us. I've got some pictures here. I'll finish on that. So the two kind of jars there show the two products: the diesel on the right and the naphtha on the left. They're super clean. The feedback we get from petrochemical folks is this is the best product I've seen in the world. So we're working with a very large German petrochemical company, been about 1.5 years working with them, multiple testing on our product. We're the only plastic reforming technology in the world that does full refining, meaning we go from low value plastic all the way to very high value products, meaning drop in. You could put it in your car, you can put it in your truck. And that has appeal. On the right would be what the biomass looks like, either in loose form or in pelletized form for agriculture or for thermal use. Here's some pictures of the plant. Pretty high tech. We developed, the whole concept we developed. We actually build a lot of the equipment ourselves. Our next generation plant, which would be the one we build in BC, would be about 80% of the same equipment in our plant in Nova Scotia. But we've learned a lot. There's been some humbling days where, recognition that we just didn't get it right. So we made our share of mistakes, but we've had great investors that have stuck with us, enabled us to solve problems, build a team that has the right attitude to solve these very difficult problems and move forward. We're in the final stages of a significant financing, And that's been kind of one of our holdbacks, is we've had enough funds to keep going and solve these problems and get our Chester operation at a reasonable level. But now we're doing a larger raise, so it's a significant financing. We're in the final stages of that, and I'm hoping within about 3 to 4 weeks we'll have a positive announcement. That's going to propel us to essentially select a couple of locations to really focus on. We want to build 2 plants, one in Eastern Canada, one in Western Canada. We want to launch those projects this year. So that's our high-level goal. I think at that, I'm going to stop, because I'm sure I'm out of time, and happy to take any questions.
Director Wally.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm totally in favor of this. I see it as the direction that we need to take for the future. I think for our solid waste board, currently with the requisition that we have, plus the tipping fees, I'm sure we're well over several $100s in cost per ton. Can you give us a ballpark figure of roughly what your cost might be per ton?
So the tipping, I'll get close to the microphone. The tipping fee we would target for Vancouver Island would be in the range of $100, right? Which we think is very competitive. So that's going to show some significant savings. And it's not a number I ever want to be held to, but that's the range. You know, if I said, no, I can't give you a number right now, you wouldn't trust me or believe me. But I think $100 is a reasonable number. It's something that we could probably be competitive, and we could you know, have an operation that's viable.
Yeah, extremely competitive.
Directors, any other questions? Director Colburn.
So you said that there was an opportunity there to take more organics out of the waste stream, and then there were other waste streams that you were interested. So can you tell me more about that? What other waste streams would you be looking at?
Yeah, so organics is one. We've talked about that. The other one would be recycled rejects, right? So you obviously have a recycling program here, curbside recycling. That would go to a recycling facility somewhere. I don't actually know where it goes to from here. And those plants, when you dig into it, and I can't speak for your exact situation, but often you'll see 30–40% of what goes into those plants gets rejected and goes to the landfill, okay? In Nova Scotia, which actually has the highest recycling rate in Canada, very closely followed by British Columbia, I would add. That's the case. So about 30% of the MRF, or material recovery facility, inbound material gets rejected. Just because, you know, people aren't perfect, right? And so things are in there that shouldn't be in there. They're not categorized properly, and so there are losses. We take that MRF rejects into our plant in Nova Scotia. So we're currently taking about 20 to 25 tons a day of material that would otherwise be landfilled, putting it into our plant, recovering valuable biomass and plastic.
Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. What about scrap wood? Can you deal anything with scrap wood or
Scrap wood?
Yes.
Yeah, no, actually, even though pulping background and pulping of wood is not something we like in our process. It just doesn't break down. You need you know, chemicals to break down wood, right? Like chemical pulping. So we can't get that back to fibers, and so wood is not great. We have actually designed, we've got a design for a plant where there is a good availability of low-grade wood, like from forest floor type biomass, and where we would feed that in. But we wouldn't cook it. It would be treated separately, shredded and ground up, and then mixed with our biomass.
Anyone else? Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Peter, for your presentation. You can tell you're really passionate about it, so that's fun to watch. I know some of our past counselors, I think they went back and visited your facility back in Nova Scotia, back during FCM a number of years back.
Yeah.
How many plants do you have right now? Just a single one back there, so you're still just fine-tuning
This is our development site, right? This is where we've essentially built the first one, developed the technologies, proving it out. We've got a bottleneck in our thermal hydrolysis system. We can't achieve the temperature we wanted to get full capacity, so we got to replace it. That's about $11 million to do that. So this financing we're doing right now is to enable us to do that, which will get us up to full capacity.
Okay, so you've got the 2 streams, you've got your paper and your plastic. So is that, now that's just extracting from waste, right?
We take landfill destined garbage, right, with everything in it. And we screen it, shred it, cook it, thermal hydrolysis, and then we're able to separate it into, in an automated manner, into a biogenic stream, biomass, which is paper and cardboard, diapers, that kind of material, and then mostly plastic. And then we do a lot of cleaning on each side to get to very pure streams.
So if you were, so obviously, one of those streams is gonna have more value than the other, possibly the plastic. Are you able to just take straight plastic rather than having to, sort it out with everything else? Is that
Yeah.
a situation where you can actually end up making more money than just?
Exactly, and this
garbage
page here in the presentation actually speaks to that, that wasn't the original intent, but as we got into learning about pyrolysis of plastic and how to do that, we bought a system from a company in the US. It didn't work that well, so hired some engineers, figured it out. We've actually built a breakthrough system for dealing with just plastic now. And what we've realized is actually that's a good business too. So we don't need to just have a plant that takes garbage and separate plastic. We can build a plant that just takes plastic. And our focus for our, so we want to launch two full-scale projects this year and one plastic plant. And our focus is film plastic, because that's the most problematic. So shopping bags, and it's not always, even banning shopping bags doesn't solve the problem. It's what we put in the shopping bags that's full of film. So we're going after film plastic. One of my engineers has been traveling the world looking at technologies for agglomerating and making it denser. And we've figured out how to do that. So we'll be able to take pure film streams, densify it, pyrolyze it, turn it back into fuel.
Okay, sorry.
So that would make more sense to have a location for that particular plant in an area where you had more access to it.
Yeah, that kind of plant would be more closer to a larger population center where, there are recycling plants that have got rejects, and, we can work with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to Director Davis, then Wally, then Goldberg.
Yeah, thank you. Really interesting presentation. I'm really glad to see that this is actually moving forward because we've been hearing about it for a few years. One of the questions I got, you're potentially producing a lot of energy here, like the naphtha and diesel. Can this plant ultimately be self-energizing? Like, can you use all this feedstock to actually power the heating processes? Does that work?
That's what we do. And in fact, only somewhere between 25 and 30% of the energy we make, the products we make, is enough to run the whole plant. So we sell,
Okay.
70% approximately.
Right. And the other thing is, I realize this is a new plant and you've been working a lot of bugs out. What's the potential if this was to happen in our region? Like, how long would it take to build such a plant?
Yeah, good question. So 2 years is what we propose as the total duration. I've built a lot of stuff around the world and in my career, and 2 years, I would have said is a really long time. We should be able to do it in a year, but for the first, next plant and maybe a few after that, we're being conservative. So 18 months to 2 years.
Okay, just one more question. The biomass you produce, you said that you can extract the heavy metals from it. Has there been further testing on that to find out its viability for use in agricultural production? Like, I'm just curious if there's any other residuals, because there's a lot of things, the products we produce.
Absolutely. We've been in a program with Canadian Food Inspection Agency for about 18 months now. And so we would have shipped them around 40 samples, representative of every season in Nova Scotia. Extensive testing on not just heavy metals, PCBs, PFAS, you name it, they've thrown it at us, and we've passed with flying colors, everything. So the way we clean our biomass is unique, and actually the agronomists that have looked at it are amazed at how clean we're able to make it. So we're confident. The federal government is running a bit behind, so they're like 16, 18 weeks, I think, behind in their approvals for CFIA. I saw a letter this morning. It was our final review, and I'm confident within a few weeks we're going to have that approval.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Wally.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you if you're scheduling a presentation such as this at the Solid Waste Board.
Yeah, well, I'd love to be invited to give an update to the Solid Waste Board, so happy to do that.
So, Mr. Chair, maybe at the end of the question period, we could have a resolution that possibly the SRD write to the TVRD and request that Sustain do a presentation, if that's the will of the board.
Director Colburn.
Steam takes water. So I'm wondering what your water input is, what the output is, and what you do with residuals.
Yeah, so we have no effluent discharge. It's a dry process. We use some water to make the steam for the cooking, and so there's that steam gets evaporated. So there's no liquid effluent at all. The water consumption is around 20 cubic meters per day is what we use in our plant in Nova Scotia. We have 2 little wells, and we run it off that.
Then one further, if I may. You said that the ideal for the picture that you have for the plant here would be, was it 70,000 ton of input, feedstock? And then what about the residuals from that? So you have a plastics component, a biomass component, and then any residuals from that, would those still need to be landfilled?
Yeah, good question. So the liquid from plastic is easy. It's diesel and naphtha. We already have customers for that. Biomass, it's agriculture or combustion. We've been in discussions with a certain pulp mill down the island that are interested, more than interested in taking it as a fuel because of its low carbon nature. The other products, our plan for that is to use it as a road aggregate. We're doing some trials in Nova Scotia right now to test it. It meets all the criteria. It doesn't need to be landfilled. And so that's the other piece. And that's somewhere between 5 and 10%.
Director Mowini.
Well, the great thing is that Director Colburn asked the questions I was going to ask, so I don't have to ask them anymore.
There you go. Director Lott.
Excellent presentation, Peter. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's very inspirational to see that we can take waste resources and turn them into a usable resource again. My question for you is along a business perspective, is that when you're assessing your site selections and you're looking at where you want to establish your plants, what would incentivize your company to choose this region over other regions?
2 reasons. British Columbia, and particularly Vancouver Island, is kind of considered across Canada, I would say, as one of the greenest parts of the country. And we're looking for a showcase on the West Coast. Even though the company I founded is in Nova Scotia, I live in Langley, BC. That's the second reason.
Hey, follow up. Go ahead.
Are you a private company or are you a publicly listed company?
We're private, yep.
Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Other than the suggestion from our CAO to get a resolution sending this information to the Solid Waste Management, what else do you need from us in the way of lobbying or any other introductions you might need to other agencies and jurisdictions?
Really good question. We've been in hurry up and wait mode for a couple of years, and it's been frustrating, probably frustrating for you folks, but it's been frustrating for us as well. But we've done the hard work. We've solved the problems. We're still here. We've survived. Our financing hopefully will be completed very soon, and then we can go forward with a vengeance. And what I mean is, we can make commitments, right? So until I know I got a runway, until I know I'm going to be funded for a few years, and I'm actually going to be able to live up to what I say, it's very hard to make commitments to say, I'm going to do this, I want to plan, here's my schedule, I need your help. We're right at the edge of that right now. So I would say once we're funded with this larger financing, we're going to come back to you and at that point and say, here's what we need in order to make a project, okay? So, I was happy to come over today and just give you an update, but I don't want I don't want you to think that we're about to launch a project. I hope we are. I hope we're getting close, and I really appreciate the offer to help us, right? Because these projects have to be collaborative. So they've got to be high engagement. People have got to talk. Nothing's perfect. We think our process is a breakthrough, but it's not perfect. Perfect might happen one day, but what we want to try and do is, find communities that are aligned, right, and want to work with us. So even though we will take the risk and we'll raise the money and build it, we're part of the community. It's important that we get that grounding up front. Oh, and one thing I would say is if you happen to be going to the FCM conference in Ontario, in Toronto, we're going to be there with a booth set up, and happy to take you to dinner and talk some more.
Okay, one last question, Director Lott.
Yeah, in conclusion, Peter, I think when you look at this region, you're looking at a very, very attractive political, regulatory, and business environment. And I don't speak for everyone, but from my community, we would love to have your business in this region. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
It was a pleasure. Thanks again.
Take care now. Director Wally?
Second.
Director Colburn, Lott, and Chapman? I'll defer. Oh, you defer? Okay. Discussion? Is there a motion on the floor?
I have a motion.
Director Vornesh? You moved a
I'd like to
motion.
make a motion.
Oh, hang on a sec. Receipt, we're done. All in favor of receipt? All opposed of receipt? Carried. Yeah, can't hear you. Sorry. Director Wally?
Thank you. I would move that we write the Solid Waste Board and request a presentation from Sustained Technology. And further, that staff bring back a report, this is our staff, on the history of alternate proposals for dealing with solid waste. And if I could speak to that.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we've got so many new directors here at the table, you're probably unfamiliar with the many times that we've had presentations such as this at the Solid Waste Board. When this comes to solid waste, I would encourage everybody to push at that board. Staff there has in the past been reluctant to change traditional dig a hole and bury it strategy. I think this is a great direction to take, but we need to push for it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. CAO?
So just if I can, Mr. Chair, on the, following up on comments from Director Wally, many may not know that there was a committee called the SWAT Committee at the Solid Waste. It was the Solid Waste Advanced Technologies Committee, I believe. I think that committee has dissolved, and if it inspires you through this presentation, that it might be a resolution once you're there to reinitiate that committee to look at advanced technologies again, because I don't believe it still exists.
Thank you. Okay, we're going on to staff reports. Oh, adoption of minutes, didn't I do that already? No. Geez, it felt like it. Adoption of minutes, please.
Move adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Regional Board held on March 29, 2023.
Thank you. Director Dahl, second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Now I can move to staff reports, right? What did I do? Did I miss a page? I did, okay. Business arising? None. Public considerations? None. Notice of motions? None. Chair report? None. So if there's nothing, I still need to speak on it. So just checking. We'll just go to staff reports now.
I would move that the report from the CAO be received on the Emergency Support Services Grant Award.
Director Wally, second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the 2023-2027 financial plan be amended and to incorporate the $294,630 revenue from the UBCM Emergency Support Grant, Services Grant to fund activities identified in the April 7th, 2023 report from the CAO.
So moved.
Director Colburn, Director Lott. Excuse me. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Number 2, Regional District Special Voting.
Move receipt of the report. Colburn?
Second.
Second was Director Mawhinney. And to speak on that would be Mr. Yates. No?
I can if you wish.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the report is really to bring back to the board's attention a matter that was dealt with approximately a year ago, where the board requested the Ministry of Municipal Affairs approve amending the special voting regulation, which has been in place for many years. They've sent it back to us asking if the board is still committed in that position, and so this report is really asking that question of the board if you're still interested or not, and we'll convey that answer to the ministry.
Okay, so we have a couple of options. I'm sorry, Director Mawhinney, do I use your microphone there, please?
Could I move option A, that the board reaffirm its request to the province of BC?
I made a mistake. We're still on receipt. Apologize. We're on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Receipt is carried. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move option A, that the board reaffirm to request to the province of BC that the Strathcona Regional District be added to the list of regional districts to which BC Regulation 41/9(1) Regional District Special Voting Regulation applies.
Second.
Second Colburn, discussion? Director Wally?
Just a question of Mr. Yates, under what kind of special circumstances would this be used? Could it be used for any question the board might have, or is it for something in the case of an emergency?
Mr. Chairman, this would be confined to those matters that would be considered urgent, and those matters only. And it would be basically a poll taken of directors in the absence of calling a meeting to deal with an emergency or urgent matter.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Number 3, Accessibility British Columbia Act.
Move receipt of the report from the CAO.
Thank you. I'm sorry? Renee will speak to it. There we go.
Good afternoon, directors, Chair Baker. Today, the report before you is to determine how the regional district will implement the requirements under the Accessibility BC Act, which came into effect in September 2022. It applies to all local government and public sector organizations, and we're required to comply by September 1st of this year. The Act is designed to support individuals with a disability of any kind and to increase accessibility and social inclusion in our community. To comply with the Act, organizations must establish an accessibility committee, develop an accessibility plan, and build a tool to receive feedback on accessibility. And as I mentioned, this work is to be started prior to September 1st of this year. The purpose of an accessibility committee is to assist local governments to identify barriers when individuals interact with their organization and how to remove and prevent those barriers in the future. The province has tasked the Disability Alliance of BC to support organizations. They've created some toolkits and templates and will be providing training to committee members once the committees are established. The province and the Disability Alliance encourage collaboration and partnerships on disability committees. And I've had some discussions with CAOs and staff from SRD member municipalities, and they are in support of a regional committee to avoid duplication of work, pooling of resources, and in some cases, our smaller municipalities would struggle with meeting the requirements of a committee. We've also had some initial discussion with other public sector organizations who have expressed an interest in participating in a regional approach as well. The decision before you today was to consider the scope of committee participation and the recommendation of a joint regional committee. No matter what type of committee structure we determine, next steps would be to develop a terms of reference and recruit committee members and host that first meeting before September 1st.
Directors, any questions? Director Lott?
Thank you for your presentation. Just for clarification, if we did establish a regional approach to this, does that exempt the municipalities from establishing their own accessibility committees?
Yes, as participants within a regional committee, they would not need to establish their own.
And priorities are established. How are those funded? Is there a pool of money that the province is making available through grant applications to fund this initiative?
The province has provided the Disability Alliance of BC $3 million to assist in rolling out the requirements. So they, right now, they have said that there's funding available for training, and there'll be other programs similar to grant programs that should be available.
May I?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just for clarification, I understand that's the organizational component to it or piece, but ongoing, once that those committees identify accessibility issues within their organization, how is that going to be financed?
I would anticipate that there'll be funding available and that the committee or the regional district would apply for those funds, or each regional municipality. The committee would provide recommendations to the member municipalities, and then the member municipalities could apply for grants, or the regional district could on their behalf.
Thank you. So that's on receipt. Sorry, somebody's up though. Director Davis, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a quick question. Will there be allowance for virtual participation? Because I know I have a member of my community that has a disabled son who's a strong advocate in this area, and I'm sure she would like to participate. I just want to make sure that there's no barriers to participation in that sense.
One of our next steps would be to develop a terms of reference where we could outline that, and as it is a regional committee, I would imagine that participation virtually would be acceptable, but we can bring that back to the board for clarification and approval of the terms of reference.
Thank you.
Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. Would the terms of reference then include considerations about like the makeup of the committee and the number of participants in the committee? Just because I noticed that we're talking about a pretty big group when we're talking about many municipalities in the regional district and other public sector organizations. And I noticed that it says we have to have a minimum of 50% of folks that are on the committee as well who are representing disabled groups or are disabled. So just wondering if that would be included.
Yes, the terms of reference would include all those details and options for makeup.
Okay, so that was on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Receipt is carried. And B, that the regional district implement the requirements of the Accessibility BC Act in developing a regional joint accessibility committee with representation from electoral areas, member municipalities, and other interested public sector partners.
So moved. Colburn.
Holy, we got Chapman, Lott, and Colburn, so everybody pick. Okay, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you very much, Renee. Okay, Rent Bank, sorry, project.
Move receipt of the report from the CAO.
Colburn,
Second.
second Chapman.
And, Mr. Chair, if I may, so if the board remembers, a few months ago, we had a presentation from the Connective Supportive Societies Rent Bank Project Group, and they'd requested some funding mechanisms and a resolution from the board to come back with some options. Again, in regional districts, I repeat this all the time, we're service-based, so there's only so many ways we can support these groups if it's the board's will. So we have either regional grants and aid, electoral or grants and aid, or establish a service if that's something that the board wants to support through a contribution to the Rent Bank Society.
Director Wally?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not in favor of this type of thing. I think we're living in a time now where many families are stressed to make their own costs meet. I think I said last night on the news there 40% of families are taking their savings just to meet their daily expenses. This type of thing where it's a interest-free zone or interest-free loan is, to my mind, targeting people who don't have any collateral and probably no income and are likely going to be in the high default category. I'm not sure if the $10,000 that they want annually is to pay their own salaries or to cover defaults on the loan or what it's for, but I don't think a financial business is something the regional district should be involved with. I think that's left up to our financial institutions. Thank you.
You, any other comments? Great, we're still in receipt. So all in favor? Receipt? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Number 5, strategic planning session. Director Wally? Director Mawhinney?
So, Mr. Chair, this is just simply to establish a date. This used to be one of the worst things we had to do was coordinate calendar times with directors, but this group has proved to be quite a bit different. So, having said that, we're looking towards a June 7th date. We've kind of given line of sight on all the calendars of your boards, councils, committees, subcommittees, and looking at June 7th, if that's a date that works for the board.
It's on receipt. Just further discussion? Director Mawhinney?
Thank you. I have one comment, which is, or a question is, would this be happening beyond 4 p.m.? Because I do have a commitment at 4 p.m. And the report sort of said all day. And then I have a follow-up question, which is, I'm excited about the strategic priorities, and will there be materials available in advance or ways we can prepare to get the most out of this session?
So first question, it has generally been a one-day session. I think likely we'd wrap up around 4. We'd do an 8 to 4 kind of deal. We've typically done it off-site and comprised it in one day. There would be likely some materials in advance to prep to make the most efficient use of our time there. And so we'll meet with a consultant. It's the same consultant that's worked with Campbell River for the last few years as well, and this board. So there's going to be a group of people that are quite familiar with her. She's familiar with the region, the member munis, Campbell River. So we'll work with her to prepare as much as we can, and so that we, don't start the meeting with a blank canvas there.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, receipt is carried. And B is that the strategic planning session for the Board of Directors be scheduled for June 7th.
So moved, Colburn.
Second lot. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it is carried. Amendment of meeting minutes.
Move receipt of the report, Colburn.
Colbert, second Director Wally. Discussion, CAO.
I think it's self-explanatory here, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And that the minutes of the March 30th, 2022 board meeting be amended by replacing Director Babchuk as seconder for SRD 288/22 with Director Baker.
So moved, Colburn.
Second, Mawhinney. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Minute meeting. Pardon me, that's just a little dyslexic there. Meeting minutes. Committee of the Whole, that the report from the CAO be received.
So moved.
Move receipt. Oh,
Director Colburn, Director Mawhinney. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It is carried. I'm sorry? You're okay? Okay.
So just for clarity, if I can, Mr. Chair, so if you arrive late to a meeting, if, you know, you arrive before the meeting ends, you're recognized as being at the meeting and remunerated for the meeting.
As long as it's not like right at the end, you know.
No, it can be right at the end.
That's too bad. But if the meeting is over, you're done. Okay, fairness by design. Obvious person, when did they change that? Years ago, really? Okay. 8 years, wow. Report from the CAO be received. Director Raleigh, Director Colburn, Mr. Yates will speak to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I believe it was last board meeting, there was a motion put forward to bring back a report, basically to look at what the meaning of the fairness by design principle was. And so the report speaks to that and essentially reinforces it's more around blind justice, if you will, from an administrative perspective. It's nothing to do with politics. And so I think that was perhaps the issue that was unclear. So the report does attempt to clarify the concept, and certainly if the board wishes to follow through on any matter to do with that, then we're quite happy to do that. But it's really, as I say, around administrative fairness.
Director Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I spoke to this at that last meeting, and my thoughts on it are that I guess our board has a long time record of bringing forward new services, and many people in our various communities are really unaware of what the board's doing. If the media happens to pick up on it, then it's in the newspaper, but otherwise it's not. And so they really miss the opportunity to voice their concerns or perhaps even support of it. I'm aware that, for example, in the village of Sayward, when they have their council meetings, there's a time allotted for the public to speak to various concerns that are on their minds. So it was kind of my opinion that that would be profitable to us to at least give the public the opportunity to be heard and the board the opportunity to consider their concerns before we go ahead and make a final decision on some new service that we're adopting. So that being the case, I had a motion in mind that maybe after receipt,
After
I
receipt.
could put forward. You can see what you think of it.
Okay, so we're still on receipt. All in favor of receipt? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Director Wally.
I'd move that staff bring back a report suggesting how policy could be developed in regard to new services that are being proposed that would engage public participation. So the concerns of our constituents will be fairly heard and considered by the board.
Director Lott, second. Further discussion? Director Chapman.
Mr. Chair, when we start a new service, there is consultation to the community. First, there's information meetings held. Then there's either an alternate approval process or a referendum when we start new services. So I think public engagement is pretty good when we start new services. But are we talking of other issues like board meeting items? Yeah, I think we have a pretty inclusive practice when starting a new service. I don't know how we could improve on that.
Director Wally.
Just, if I could, through the chair, to Director Chapman, sorry. Speaking of when a new service comes forward, how do you see the public being informed? Like the residents in Sayward have no newspaper. And the opportunity I have through the Sayward News that comes out monthly, I can put in comments on the 20th of the month. They come out on the 1st of the month. But there's only about half the public that ever gets that. The other half is considered junk mail, don't get it. So really those residents up there haven't got a clue what's going on. They don't know. So how do Campbell River residents find out that there's a new proposal for a service at the board level?
Well, I think at the board level? Well, there's Facebook issues, Facebook opportunities, as well as the press. So, yes, I forgot you're in the hinterland without newspapers.
Yeah, so we don't have that. I'm
Right.
sure there's many outlying communities that don't as well.
But there's no Facebook out up north either?
Well, not that it brings anything from the regional district. There's no regional district Facebook that anybody looks at. There's an internal Round Sayward thing, but it's not on there.
Wow.
Okay. Director Dole.
I just wanted to mention that in 2023, most people are using social media. They're not reading a newspaper. We have one paper apparently in Campbell River. And I can tell you that I probably read a paper the last time when the Courier Islander was still here. They serve next to no purpose. And I own a business that runs an ad in the paper, and the only reason I do it is so that my competitors know that I'm still here. But nobody comes to my shop because they read the paper.
Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. I think this really does shine a light on the differences between our rural communities and our electoral areas and our cities, more urban areas. And I mean, I really understand Director Wally's concern that, you know, what may work or may not work in Campbell River certainly isn't going to work out in the hinterlands. So, you know, I think, you know, possibly, you know, whether, I'm not sure if this motion is just going to require a report, but I think certainly identifying that we have different challenges and trying to address that, not just, you know, for services or new services, but just all around. You know, like how do we communicate with our rural members?
Director Wally.
Yeah, we do have an Around Sayward Facebook thing that lots of people look at. And the SRD also has a communications officer. Perhaps in that report, there might be a way to have the SRD once in a while put something on that page and keep the residents informed. It's just a matter of them being informed, because it just doesn't seem right for the constituents to be totally in the dark. It goes all the way through the board. And more than not, we'll use an alternate approval process because we can't afford to do a referendum anyway. So they never even know what's happening, and it's done. That's all.
Okay, so we have Julie, Director Colburn.
Thanks, and I think this is a really interesting conversation, and it does highlight our differences. I know that whenever anything goes on in our small community, we use the village Facebook page, the village website, the local Facebook page, box stuffer, and then posters around the community, and that's the only way that we can engage everyone. And I don't know that we will engage anybody unless we get a multi-level, you know. So I think that, you know, if there's a couple ideas that communications or the CAO wants to throw around that could come back to us, that I don't see any harm in that.
Director Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Speaking also as a representative of a small rural community, most of our citizens here get their information from a Facebook page specific to TASIS, and it's quite effective. We also post notifications at our post office, which pretty much everybody sees. So that's how we mostly deal with it here, and we pretty much cover everybody off with that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. No further discussion. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Bylaws on correspondence. Sorry. Director Mowini.
Thank you. I just had I had a different question about the ombudsperson report, and I'm wondering if are we finished with that now, or is it okay to bring it up?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Because I noticed that the report highlighted the main points of the ombudsperson's fairness by design. They talk about reasoned decisions, equity, accessibility, impartiality, and integrity. And the report also mentions that it's up to each public organization to review its procedures. What are the SRD's procedures around fairness and equity and complaints being accepted and addressed? Is there a policy which addresses these issues? And when was the last time it was reviewed?
CEO.
Well, the SRD has a code of conduct, and I think included in that is fairness. So we have coming up a review of the code of conduct in May, I believe, but that's where we have our policy, our bylaw in terms of, code of conduct and fairness.
May I ask a follow-up?
Go ahead.
I was just curious if the code of conduct is something that is applicable to all staff, and the way that we as an organization conduct ourselves. Is that correct?
I would say that's a fair statement, yeah.
Okay. Now go on to correspondence. Second, you want? Director Moini, sorry.
Can we pull number 1?
Motion.
Made a motion for item number 1 to be on the floor for debate.
Okay. Any others? Or do we have to go through them individually?
I just moved one, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
because I think that people want to talk to various.
Okay, well, let's discuss one. Go ahead, Director Wally. Moini.
Thank you. I read the Municipal Insurance Association annual report, and I was really interested in it. In particular, I was interested that they mention a framework that they've developed for capturing and assessing creative ideas, including ideas generated within their organization and from members such as our board. The Discovery Islands and Mainland Inlets area has many nonprofit organizations working for the betterment of the community. A key concern I hear from these organizations is the cost of insurance. And I've been asked repeatedly if there are ways, or if there would be a way for the Strathcona Regional District to offer access to more reasonably priced insurance for these nonprofit groups. I wonder if there are other areas within the SRD where nonprofits have highlighted this concern, and if we might, as a board, be interested in inquiring with the Municipal Insurance Service of BC to consider offering a product accessible to community-minded nonprofits in support of the valuable work they do. And I do have a proposed motion when it's the right time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Municipal Insurance Association has for quite some time had a program, I believe it's called the Affiliate Member Program, whereby nonprofits, societies, et cetera, that do not wish to or can't afford their own insurance can apply through the regional district. Now, the kicker is that they must be providing a regional district service in order to qualify under the rules that have been in place for a long time. I don't believe those rules have changed, but if it is the wish of the board, we can certainly check that out further.
Director Wally.
Yeah, not to detract from your upcoming motion, but in Sayward, we have a nonprofit society, Sayward Futures, that works as an umbrella group for every other little society who can't afford their own insurance. They are insured underneath the umbrella of that one. So that might be a model that you could look at.
Subsequent from, or we're still on receipt? Still on receipt. I actually caught that. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Director Morwini.
Thank you. I would like to propose this motion, which I think I gave to Edith and everything. So, whereas the costs of insurance are continuously increasing and are a costly impediment to community nonprofit organizations, and whereas community nonprofits often rely on grant and aid funding from the regional district to support their operations in the face of rising insurance rates, that the Strathcona Regional District send a letter to MIABC inquiring under their framework for capturing ideas about the possibility of offering access to insurance for community-focused nonprofits.
Second, Vinesh.
Second, Vinesh. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, so let's go through. We got from number 2 to 7 be received. Director
So
Colburn,
moved.
Director Wally, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, correspondence is carried. Members' report.
Move receipt of the report from alternate Director Fowler regarding the regional transportation services.
Second.
I'll second that.
Bless you, Director Colburn. Director Davis, did you want to speak to this?
Sorry, I was just activating my mic there. You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was reading this over, and while I support it in principle, I think it's sort of prejudging our regional transportation strategy and the final report. So I don't feel strongly about moving this motion at this point.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? All in favor of receipt? Opposed? Is carried. Members' report, that
Move.
was it. Sorry,
Move that the addendum be considered.
second? Director Chapman, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried.
And I would move that the report from the CAO considering the last mile funding application for the new Chatlet First Nation be received.
Director Chapman is second. Discussion.
Just, Mr. Chair, this is one of many ongoing last mile applications that we continue to make to the province. City West does on behalf. We have got feedback that they may be interested in looking at a number of applications. The new Chatlet First Nation is one, and they would like a letter of support from the regional district.
Director Colburn.
And really appreciate that this is on here. I have memory of a tsunami warning that we had quite a few years ago where New Chatlet is served by TELUS by both internet and phone, and it was down. And so during that tsunami warning, that community had no idea that there was a tsunami warning. And so I'm really pleased to see this on here. Any way that we can get these small outlying communities on here so they can be have better warning systems for safety and also for education, for healthcare, for all of the things that last mile that internet is good for. So thank you.
Director Lott.
I'd just like to echo Director Colburn's sentiments, like our First Nations neighboring community would receive all the benefits that a small community like Gold River is going to enjoy from the implementation of the service. So yeah, we welcome it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Still on receipt? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none?
Move up.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I just said move option 1.
Second.
He's assuming it's carried.
I guess that means it's carried. Yeah, we'll go carried. Director Chapman is doing the second on that. Discussion? All in favor? Is that the chime? Oh, it says to end meeting. Okay. All in favor? That's all carried. That's all good, yeah. Okay. Closed session. Who wants a closed session? Nobody? Okay.
Move termination.
Second.
Second,
Davis.
Block. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Y'all have a wonderful week.